Everyone. Welcome to the Center for Art and Wood and our talk series, second installment of our How It Started and How It's Going collectors discussion series with Dan Zobel. I will give us another minute to kind of get seated and get comfy, and then we'll launch right in. Glad to see you this Thursday evening. While you're doing that, I think, Katie, I'll start with our land acknowledgement, which wherever you are coming to us today, the Center for Art and Wood is sited on the unceded territories of the Lenni Lenape and Wingokaking people, and we are acknowledging that today and just extending our most heartfelt appreciation and recognition of this fact, and also if you would like to know more about how you can help the ancestral tribes of this region to be recognized by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which they currently are not, we can point you in the direction of ways to do that. It's really important, particularly for the Center for Art and Wood, to recognize this heritage, since so much that we talk about and the material that we focus on is land-oriented. So I'm just going to launch right in. The How It Started and How It's Going series was launched last year in May of 2021 as a way to bring secrets of collecting or that kind of mysterious activity of collecting art and wood to the public in order to demystify that world, and also encourage others to participate. Without the collectors of art and wood, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. The dedication, the passion, sometimes the really positive mania that goes into collecting in this field can lead to a lot of very interesting discussions, but it also supports the artists in our world and creates beautiful relationships and friendships as well. So we are here to open a window into that world and to bring you in touch with some of our most dedicated collectors. And tonight, we are joined by Dan Zobel, who is not only a collector of art and wood, but also a maker of art and wood, in addition to the many, many, many other things that he occupies himself with. So I'm going to hand this over to Katie Sorensen, the Center's Director of Outreach and Communications, and she's going to introduce our guest speaker tonight.
Hey everyone, welcome to How It Started and How It's Going, our collector speaker series. Tonight's special guest is Dan Zobel. Hi, Dan. And Dan Zobel is a Philadelphia furniture shop manager, woodturner, and collector of wood art. Dan's love of woodworking and wood turning began in 2007 under the tutelage of Mark Sfirri at Bucks County Community College. We all love Mark Sfirri. Through school, as well as the attendance of collaborative events, primarily Echo Lake, he made many connections with fellow local, national, and international woodworkers. Dan's wood art collection actually began when he went to a Michael Hosaluk demo. He helped with bringing out his tools and paints, and with that, Michael gifted Dan a small demo piece. The kindness, trust, and demonstrated skill from this interaction only expounded his love for the art. It's a really special story. I hope we hear more about that. The local wood turning community and friendships have helped to continually grow Dan's love of the art and collection. His collection is not nearly the scale as our first collector, Joe Seltzer. But one unique aspect of the collection is that there is no restrictions. And if you recall, Joe has a restriction of 7 inches in all dimensions. Dan's collection includes prints, furniture, turnings, and sculpture. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Dan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining tonight. This is the first one of these that I've ever really done, and hopefully not the last, but who knows? We could see how the night goes. So when when Katie reached out to me to discuss this event, I didn't know entirely what to talk about or exactly how to proceed. But with some guidance and reviewing Joe's Seltzer's presentation from a few months ago, I was able to kind of piece together a PowerPoint and hopefully add some little anecdotal stories to each piece, so everyone can kind of understand how I started doing this, why I started doing this, and I guess the end result is how it's going, and it's going a bit unique because of the pandemic, but we'll get to that part when we do. I'm going to share my screen. Katie informed me that you can also see me when I screen share, so I was told not to pick my nose or anything like that, but I'll do my best. So give me 1 second just to pull this up. So can everyone see that?
Yeah.
I can't.
Looks
Okay, I was
good.
gonna say I can't tell if everyone can.
Yeah, no, it looks good.
Okay, so just a title page. This is my personal shop. It's my garage. When I graduated from college, I really wanted to have a turning studio, so I tried to gather the materials and tools to really have that, knowing that, you know, a full-on woodworking facility is quite a bit larger, has, you know, a lot larger machines, and I thought that a turning studio in and of itself would suffice my needs. So that's just, you know, a little bit on that. I had a good friend of mine paint the background of the shop to add some color to the drabness of the concrete wall. But so how it started, I had the privilege of learning under some really renowned makers, most notably Mark Sfirri, Alphonse Mattia, and Steve Lohr. Mark was a really huge inspiration to me as a maker. When I first applied to Bucks County Community College, he gave me a call maybe a month later and was like, "Hey, Dan, you don't have any woodworking on your experience. Like, are you sure you really want to do this? Are you sure you're in the right classes?" And I was like, "Look, I, you know, have dabbled a little bit in making guitars and repairing guitars." And he was like, "All right, you know, maybe skip the beginning woodworking class then and sign up for Wood One." And from then, I spent 2 years studying under him, which was a really great experience. He kind of got me into turning. At the end of my time at Bucks County Community College, I had the opportunity to attend my first Echo Lake event, which we will get to in a little bit. But that was a really enlightening collaborative event, which helped make me realize more and more that being a collector or having some pieces by people that you've met that you've liked really enlightens your daily life. From there, I went to Indiana University. I'm gonna go. This is like a brief little thing, but I'm gonna actually go through each of these kind of on individual slides. So this is just kind of like the synopsis. So we'll just start skipping through some slides. So this is who I am, but I'm big into woodworking art, woodworking, printmaking art, really sculptural art, a lot of 3D things. I really don't have a style or taste that I gear towards. It's just kind of in the moment a thing that I think is cool. I make, I'm also a maker. I'm a shop manager at Edgewood Made in Philadelphia. Um, so professionally, I make, but also personally, I'm a wood turner, as you just saw my shop. Um, I like to make wood art on my own time as well. And I love things that are sawdusty and mechanical. I think my biggest one thing that almost always intrigues me is like gears and mechanical things. These are just some of the pieces that I've made personally throughout the years. And I'm fortunate enough to actually say like a number of these have made it into other collections, which I think is really cool. And I think it kind of helped me want to also like, I think every piece on this page that I think sold, that money was used to get something from another maker, which I think is really my goal. Like I'm not in making for the profit. I'm not a full-time artist. I really respect people that are. But for me, it is something that I really love doing. And if I can do a little bit and in turn help support someone else, I think that that's something that I just really enjoy. So backtrack a little bit. So Mark was a huge inspiration of mine in college. One of the first pieces I received that was added to my collection is the print that you see in the middle, which is called Mulberry on Pineville. It's a tree outside of Mark's home. He did the woodcut in it. So Mark, for anyone that doesn't know, Mark does a combination of things. He's a wood turner, he's a wood sculptor, he's a printmaker, he uses he has some watercolor drawings. He really is he does a lot. And throughout the years, I've been just some of his work is some of like the quirkiest and but also really tightly well made that I've ever seen. And for those reasons, I ended up, in the past couple of years, having quite a few of his pieces in my collection that are a little bit smaller. I've also gifted a couple pieces of his. I just really enjoy his work a lot. But it's not that I only enjoy his work. He was someone that really inspired me as a woodworker, as a mentor, and as a friend, to want to collect wood art and to also want to support makers. So the pieces that you see here are the top left is just a picture of Mark, and then the pieces that you see here in addition to his picture are he made a series of like animal heads. So the bottom left is one of those pieces that I thought they were quirky and fun. The middle piece is the print he made of Mulberry on Pineville. And then to the right is something he's a little bit more commonly known for. And that is actually one of his rejects from the Bat Factory series. I had the opportunity to get that a few years back, and it was kind of it was one of those pieces that I always saw, always really wanted, never really knew if I'd ever be able to get. And it was kind of one of those aha moments in adding that to my collection that I see it every day when I walk in the front door, and it's probably one of, if not my favorite pieces in my collection. But moving forward from Mark, I spent 2 years at Bucks, got my associate's degree, and transferred to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I studied under Alphonse Mattia. So Alphonse is also a hugely renowned furniture maker. He was a professor at RISD for a long period of time. Oddly enough, like the years I was at IUP were some of the few years he was there. It was like getting one of the best educations you possibly could in the field at like a hugely discounted price. And as a byproduct of that, you know, I had him, he was friends with Mark. I didn't know that right away, but it's crazy how there's like a lot of tightly knit community in the woodworking field. So Alphonse was really good friends with Mark. And one goal that I had when I was in school was I really wanted to try to get a piece from each professor that I had that was a maker. And Alphonse, I had the opportunity to help to actually help him print a series of these prints on the right, and in turn he gifted me one. And so that actually hangs next to the Mark print from the previous slide in my living room. And then on the left is one of Alphonse's valets. That again, it's like this quirky, weird, unique thing that, you know, I saw it and had the opportunity to purchase it and really couldn't say no at the time. When I purchased that, I was actually on a motorcycle ride and got it and had to call someone to help me bring it home. Really considered strapping it to my back, thought maybe not the best idea. That's about 6.5 foot tall. And all the pieces on the top, it's called Mr. Potato Head Valet. All the pieces on the top are interchangeable and movable. But Alphonse was a big inspiration as well. At IUP, I also had the, I believe the Center for Art and Wood has an ottoman of Alphonse's in their permanent collection. Another person I had the privilege of working with at IUP was Steve Lohr. He is a maker who works with seconds and rejects of other artists and turns them into various other pieces. The piece that you see on the left was part of the Ray Key benefit auction in, I want to say 2019, but it could have been 2018, after Ray Key, the UK woodturner, passed away. Some of his bowl blanks that weren't finished were sent to makers throughout the world to make a piece out of, and I had the opportunity to get this one, which I was really honored to get. So moving ahead, so that was like my schooling and what really like got me fired up about woodworking. That fire kind of only like really continued as the community of woodworking, as I met more people, as those people shared new ideas with me, as those people shared their art with me, some of those people quickly became really close friends, and the events that also occur in the woodworking community, the AAW symposiums, collaborative events like Echo Lake, Arrowmont classes, and teach assisting, and just there's an enormous amount of craft schools and shows and everything that if you put a little bit of effort in, you can find just a huge amount of them, and it's really enlightening and beneficial to see. So to go back to the story that Katie mentioned in the intro, the very first piece that I got in my collection is the piece that you see on the left. It's about 3 inches tall. I went to a demo at Dave Hardy's house in Upper Bucks County as a recommendation from Mark. He's like, Mike Hosaluk's a great demonstrator. He's going to be there. Little did I know at that time that they were like best of friends. But I went to this demonstration and I got talking to Mike in one of the breaks, and Mike had mentioned to me, hey, or I had mentioned to him I was transferring from Bucks going to IUP, and he said to me, hey, I'm actually going out there next week. I have to fly, and I would love it if I didn't have to check all my tools and paints in the airplane. He's like, is there any chance that you'd be willing to take them out for me? I'd of course reimburse you in some way. And I was like, don't worry about it. I have to drive out there anyway. But I also, it blew my mind. Like, I've never met this person before. I was really new to wood turning in general. I barely knew who Mike Hosaluk was. And he entrusted me with probably $2,000 worth of paints and tools. And I could have just been some schluck. And I thought it was really pretty awesome. And then on top of all that, he was like, hey, because you're taking this out, have this. And it's just this little maple burl hollow form. It's got a big knot on the one side of it, but I think he turned it in all of like 10 minutes, and it's damn near perfect in terms of like wall thickness, everything that, people that are more particular than me at the time looked for. But I was pretty blown away by it. And then just the generosity of someone and the trust of someone to be like, here's $2,000 worth of stuff and also have this. And then expecting that I knew what the hell I was doing to get out to IUP and pass all that stuff to the correct person. Needless to say, it went off without a hitch. And I ended up with my first piece in my collection. And then probably about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to see Mike again at a demonstration at Bucks County Community College, where I managed to purchase the piece on the right, which is one of his teapots. He put this on the table at the demonstration, and I couldn't stop laughing at it. It is one of the quirkiest wood turnings and weirdest things, and just most hilarious pieces of art that I could imagine. And I'm also like a pretty big tea drinker. So to have this maniacal looking teapot sitting on my shelf, I just thought was like the coolest thing in the world. And then, not to mention, it was like a way to he gave me the first piece of my collection. He showed like a lot of generosity in doing that. So to add another piece of his to my collection, that's like a more refined piece of his, and then just the difference between them was kind of just cool. So cycling through again, I brought up Echo Lake a few times, and it's it was canceled the past 2 years, but it is a collaborative event at Bucks County Community College that I've had the privilege of attending probably in the past 10 years or close to it since graduating from Bucks. And the first experience that I had at it was my final year at Bucks. I won the Echo Lake Award for a table I had built. And as a byproduct of that, you got to participate in this event. And little did I know that there were going to be, I thought, how big is the woodworking field? There's probably not going to be like that many people here. I don't even know what this thing is. And little did I know I had the opportunity, I think that year or the next year, to meet like Bin Po and just a huge number of really renowned artists end up at this event at the college that I went to, because the professor that I had such great connections, and there was such a great group in the area, in the local Bucks County area, that supported collecting. That Joe Seltzer is on the board for Echo Lake, and he helps bring in artists from throughout the country. At the first Echo Lake Collaborative, I also had the privilege and opportunity to work with people from the International Turning Exchange, which is hosted by the Center for Art and Wood every year. It's their residency program. So through that, I've been able to meet people from around the world. I think at one of the first ones I was at was I'm drawing a blank on his name at the moment. I'll get back to you. But there was just like this crazy number of really talented artists that you would have never really had the opportunity to meet had you not attended this. And then one of the cool things about the event is at the end of it, there's an auction it's a 3-day event where makers are just making things for 3 days, collaborating with other artists. And at the end of it, all the pieces get auctioned off. And all that auction does really is support the event. It helps pay for meals for the event. It helps house the people coming in. I think that at one point there was the students got an award. It was just a really great experience. And from that were, the pieces that you see on your screen right now are all collaborative pieces, and they're very few. I actually have like probably 10 or 15 more of Echo Lake pieces just in the house. But these were like some that I could take a quick snapshot of. But there are also some that are like representative of some friends or some people that I don't know that I would have had an opportunity to meet had Echo Lake not happened. On the left, you see a little pink ivory head that was turned by Derek Weidman, really close friend of mine. The ears were painted by Ward Stevens, and the top of the head was gold leafed by Bill Sticker, who was on the Echo Lake committee as well. You move to the right to the larger scale sculpture. And that was a piece that I had done the wood carving almost 6 or 7 years before that Echo Lake. And then I had the opportunity to work with Cynthia Gibson and Carol Hall on that piece. And it was just really, they turned it into something that I wouldn't have ever imagined. And then I believe John Burns made the stand for it. And then going down from there, there's a piece that Mike Tanner did with a little Cynthia Gibson burning on it. And then the base was made by another artist. And then one of the cool things that's done every year is there's always a print made at Echo Lake. The one you see on the left was one of a series of 3 prints that was made for the 20th anniversary of Echo Lake. So there's 3 of them that are all different with different artists, but each of those 2, I believe they're 2 1/8 by 2 1/8 prints, is a print by an individual maker. And on this particular sheet, I'm definitely going to forget some of the makers on here, but I was the top left. I believe that Mark Sfirri was the next row down in the middle. I believe Graham Priddle's on this page somewhere. Miriam Carpenter is the bird on it. It's just a real, Cynthia is on the bottom right. Yeah, it's just a really cool opportunity to get like a lot of makers in one spot and work with them and learn from them. And then at the end of the day, maybe collect a piece of theirs. Scrolling on, this is where I come down to like the friends section of the presentation. So friends are always a huge inspiration. If you meet someone, one rule I have of collecting is like, I won't buy a piece or support an artist that I think is a jerk. And that might sound weird, but they could make the most beautiful things in the world. If something that they've said or done, I don't think is worth supporting, I just won't buy a piece of theirs. And there's a number of artists that are really well known in the field that I will never buy a piece of for that reason. But to go back to some of the friends aspects of things, the piece on the left is another Derek Weidman head that is probably one of the craziest pieces I have in my collection, but he knew that my colors were the secondaries. I love green, purple, and orange. And this head was just a killer piece to add to the collection. On the top row is Cynthia, who I've had a lot of back and forth discussions with at events at Echo Lake a couple times at the AW Symposium. And I was really surprised. And this was one of the collaborative piece, one of the first dolls that she had made as a collaboration with Bin Pho. And it's one of those pieces that it, I don't know that it was like a piece that drew me right away, but knowing the people that, like, Bin was one of the first people I worked with at an Echo Lake, and Cynthia was one of the, you know, early on. And then they're both just like two of the best people you ever met. And then you have the opportunity to get a piece that's worked on by both of them. And it just like, it's just incredible. Moving to the right from that is a piece by Miriam Carpenter, who I've also, you know, she's a local in Bucks County. I've had the honor of like being able to hang out with Miriam and her partner, Mike, and, you know, see the feathers that she's been making from like the time that they became an idea to what they've grown to now. And I think it's just really awesome to see friends just blow up. On the bottom, on the bottom picture that you see is actually, you know, I said the bats were my favorite. This piece was like a real hard one for me to receive, but it's definitely really one of my favorites. This was a bowl I had turned and burned this line work onto a long time ago and passed it to my friend Carol Hall. If you don't know Carol, look up her work. She works with her husband Mark a lot, and they do what, like, she is a painter primarily, and I've worked with her collaboratively on a number of pieces. But I gave her this bowl and was like, I'd love to make something with you, and then kind of forgot about it. And then a year, maybe like a couple months after that, my dog had passed. And it was like one of the hardest things I'd ever gone through as a person. I'd had the dog for 12 years. He was my buddy. And Carol gave me back this bowl like, you know, a year later with a picture of Wrigley painted on it. Actually, there's 3 pictures of him painted on it in like different poses or different like things that he was doing. And then on the inside of the bowl is actually my dog now, which is Ralston, little 3-legged hound dog. And then to the right is a piece by Emmett Kane. He's a woodworker over in Ireland. This is part of his series Crock of Gold. Another maker that maybe you don't hear a lot about in the States. Maybe some people do, and I'm like mistaken saying that. But I had the opportunity to meet him while I was teach assisting Derek and him a few years ago at Arrowmont, and man, was he one of the funniest people I've ever had the privilege of hanging out with. And it was one of those opportunities where, all right, you meet someone and then they make these really cool things, and then it's like, well, I'm not a big picture taker, but I know I can remember all those moments that I had with Emmett when I look at this piece, and I don't necessarily need the picture. So moving on from this page, you can get into like the inspirations. So like people that you know in the field or that you've worked with in the field, or that whose work you've seen in the field, that, I mean, they're the legends. They're the people that really inspired you from the get-go to be a maker outside of maybe the professors. So in the bottom left is a segmented turning by Bill Smith. He is a local Bucks County wood turner. And he made really crazy segmented stuff. This is really a bland piece of his work, and it's still perfect. He makes really abstract sculptures, segmented turning. But this was like, when I got this piece, it was what I could afford at the time. And you just you meet someone, they grow on you, you realize how important they are to the community. And it's hard to not want to be reminded of them as a person when you see a piece of their art. to the right of that is a Wharton Esherick print. Anyone in the Philadelphia area should really know who Wharton Esherick is as a father of American modern furniture. He's always, I think, probably a byproduct of being a student of Mark Sfirri's is that I love Wharton Esherick. This print is one of, I have 3 of his prints in my house. This is my favorite one. It's also the most recent one I got and was the most expensive one. But I got it as a treat to myself for like my 30th birthday a couple years ago, because I'd never seen it in the wild before, and it came up and I wanted it. Next to that is a John Jordan piece. And then next to that's a Betty Scarpino piece. And for anyone that knows the wood turning field, these are like 2 of the people that really started it. Betty, as far as like female makers, there's not a ton of them, and they don't always get the vocalization that they deserve in the field. And when I met Betty, really personally, was at one of the AAW symposiums, and we got to start talking about dogs and hound dogs in particular. And she told me she has a son named Dan that had a hound dog, and I was like, oh man, oh man, oh man, like all these things. And she is just like this incredible person, on top of being one of the best fluid wood carvers I've ever seen. Like, her work has such a softness to it that I don't think anyone could mimic if they tried. And then John Jordan to the left of that is, anyone that knows wood turning knows, like, he is one of probably like the 2 guys that started hollow forms, the other being David Ellsworth. And unfortunately, I don't have a piece of Ellsworth's yet. And it drives me nuts because Ellsworth was also a Bucks County legend, which is where I grew up. And my goal is he's probably one of the next on the list to try to get a piece of, if I can ever afford it. So when I talk about all this stuff, it's like, these are like some pieces I have, and reasons that I have them are not, a lot of it is like more personal. It's not just me going to a show and seeing a piece that I like and buying it. A lot of it, there's been some interaction with the people involved that make it a more special piece. So when I say, what art do you support? You support great people. The art can be amazing. It could be terrible. But you have to support the people. And I'm fortunate enough that I've met some great people that make amazing things that I just want to see every day. So just to go through a couple of the pieces on this screen, the piece under Great People is a Benoit Averly box. And I met him at one of the AAW symposiums and went out and got drinks with him, and just was like, man, this guy's like really cool. I've seen his work. It's worth like seeing his work every day. Below that is a Joyce McCullough plattern. Some people in the chat may know Joyce, some may not. She was a local legend in the wood turning and carving community. She passed a few years back. It was really hard on the Bucks County wood turning community because she was a participant every year at Echo Lake. But she was like one of the sweetest people you'd ever meet. And she would just jump in to give a hand to anyone that was working on a project with her. Above that, the blue geometric style box is Jim Scarcella. He was the director at Aramont for a little bit, and I just thought his work was killer. He was a really nice guy. I had a few good conversations with him, and it was just like one of those, all right, another great person, unique design, won it. Below that is a Troy Grimwood piece. He's from New Zealand. Troy is in a wheelchair, and me, him, and Derek Weidman had the opportunity to like go to a really big collector's house in the DC area. And it was a really nice experience after having met Trim Troy at the AAW symposium. I got to spend the day with him and have a lunch with him and have beers with him, and then wish him the best in his travels. And I still talk to him via like Facebook Messenger or email. To he and his wife just had a baby, but he's a great guy. Above that is a sculpture with his tongue sticking out. That's Big Red, is what it's called. It's by a maker, Keith Holt. Keith was another artist who he had gifted me a piece a long time ago at Echo Lake that was like an unfinished piece. And it was like, man, you put hours into this and you just like didn't take it home with you. You like gave it to me. And since then, I think I have like 3 more pieces of Keith's, because I think that this is like one of the ways that he works. He also does like really abstract, but more figurative faces turned on the lathe. And I have like a variety of his pieces, and it's cool to see that kind of collection of one person's experience. Below that is a Laurent Leclerc piece that is a little teapot pouring out a big drop. Again, I'm a big tea drinker, so when I saw like this little neat piece at a symposium, and then talked to Laurent, and then saw one of his demos. And for anyone interested in like watching a wood turning demo, Laurent is like a younger guy that has, his demos are some of the best I've ever seen. He's as tight as could possibly be in terms of giving a demo. So if you ever have the opportunity, do it. To the right of that is an Ellie Richards piece. It's a construction stake that she turned into a pencil. I purchased this at the ITE show at the Center for Art and Wood. I think 2019, but Katie could probably correct me if I'm wrong.
2019, yeah.
Okay. And this was after having had the opportunity to work with Ellie at the Echo Lake Symposium. So like you get to see this piece every day, and it just brings you back to a minute in time where you had the opportunity to be with this person that made this thing, and just experience like such a variety of work. Moving over from that is a little drawing that Katie Hudnall did. She's also an incredible maker. Furniture, drawing, anything you could think of. Her work is quickly become like some of my favorite things in the world. I wish that my whole house could be furnished by Katie. If you don't know her as a maker and you really like unique, almost Dr. Seuss-y, but not Dr. Seuss-y kind of furniture that has cool mechanisms in it, whether it be like door clasps or pulls or hidden things inside of things inside of things. Katie's just like the bee's knees. Scrolling on from there. So this is just like a couple snapshots of my house that kind of shows that like every day I just kind of like get the opportunity to see some art, whether it be a table that was worked on, or a cabinet that someone made, or just how things are like arranged. That, the first speaker of the series, Joe Seltzer, he has about 2 rooms of his house that are pretty much like a museum to wood art. And they're much more controlled environments than I could probably create. So I just have to do a lot more dusting than he probably does. But for these pieces, I get the opportunity to come in. So my front door, I walk in and I see the picture that's all the way to the right, which is it's a Katie Hudnall piece of furniture with the Mark Sfirri bats above it. And on Katie's piece of furniture is a little dog head by Derek Weidman, a little hollow form by Dixie Biggs, that crock of gold by Emmett Kane, a larger hollow form by Robbie Graham out of New Zealand, the little piece by Troy Grimwood out of New Zealand, one of the Keith Holt heads that I had mentioned in the previous slide. There's a Pascal Odette little turning above in the top right nook, and then below that's like the Laurent Niclot teapot drop. And when I got this from Katie, she was actually coming to Philly to pick up a piece she had at the Center for Art and Wood at the Making a Seat at the Table show, which was, oh, I'm wearing the t-shirt. But a Making the Seat at the Table show, which was women in woodworking. And like I said in a previous slide, there's not been a lot of acceptance in the field for women or people of color. And I think that as the field grows, that's becoming more and more prevalent. And I think it's really a neat thing to see our field diversify in that way, because I think it was getting a little stagnant with what ideas were coming out of it. So to the bottom, to speak on that little notion, on the bottom left, or on the very bottom picture, is a couple of those Echo Lake collaborative pieces, but the wall to the left of that is kind of like a little designation to women in the art field. The top piece is the Betty Starpino piece. Then I have the Katie Hudnall drawing. Below that, I have the Miriam Carpenter print. And then below that, I have a little embroidery and paper cut by an artist, Emily Schubert, who I had the opportunity to meet when she was a artist in residence at Arrowmont. But those are just like some of the more 2D pieces that I had by women makers. But I think that it's important for our field to keep growing and branching out and not being like an old guys club anymore. In the top left picture, you can see that big crazy thing in the center. And that's actually a piece that was done by Leah Woods, Miria Carpenter, and Sandra Shikatani. And it's a bunch of ginkgo leaves casting, like ginkgo leaves were casted and then painted and then arranged in this swirling pattern. But the ginkgo leaves that were casted were from the Nakashima property in New Hope. And just having this cool, like weird piece of artwork made by 3 really awesome female friends in the woodworking field. It's just to keep that kind of stuff growing is just an awesome ability. So if you saw like the Instagram posts or some other things, and if you look at the top middle one at the back left corner, like I'm a big Grateful Dead fan, so there's like a couple Grateful Dead things hanging throughout my house. That's an old Rolling Stone magazine, but in the one picture on Instagram, there's a poster from their last show in Philly. But the table in that upper middle picture was a table that was made at Echo Lake. That was like a collaborative venture between myself, Jeff Chelf, Carol Hall, Suzanne Kahn, and Ray Fonts, I think, did aspects of it. But there's just like there's a lot of stories behind each piece, and there's a lot of moments that you can revisit mentally and be like, oh, you guys remember when we put like way too much oil on that tabletop and it took like all Echo Lake to dry? yeah, that's just like, it's nice to be able to come into my house and see these little like shrines of art throughout. So one of the questions that people always ask is like, why do you collect art, and where can you get inspired from art? And like, one of the places that you can get inspired is galleries, museums, symposiums, exhibitions, and just like doing your own research, seeing magazines. Museums and galleries primarily, I think, hold a lot of pieces that maybe aren't wood, but will guide you to something that is wood. A lot of wood art is based off of historical pieces. But the Center for Art and Wood in Philly, I mean, it is a huge resource for woodworking. They have a huge library and a huge permanent collection, and there's ongoing shows and talks. I feel really honored to be flanked between a speaker, I believe it was yesterday or the day prior, talking about gender and woodworking. And then tomorrow, I believe, is another talk on a series that Hart Radaman did in the 2019 ITE that's going to be discussed by Jack Larimore, who's like a huge Philly maker. So me being able to get flanked between these other great presenters is kind of an honor. Symposiums and exhibitions. The American Association of Woodturners puts on a symposium every year. There's also the Mid-Atlantic Woodturner Symposium, which if you're in the Philadelphia area, that's in Lancaster. It's a little bit more accessible. Craft Now Philadelphia is a good resource. Philadelphia Craft and Furniture shows. And then one thing I always love to do, and I actually did a couple weekends ago, was go to a student art show at Bucks County Community College. You get to kind of like see some makers before they're like makers. And I think that that's kind of a neat thing. And you have the opportunity to actually, like, sometimes you can purchase a piece from a person that really, really needs it and isn't necessarily like a really renowned maker already, but that's going to help them get their next set of chisels or their next tool. So I'm always a big avid supporter of trying to visit your local craft shows as well. In our area, there's also like the Tylersport Craft Festival in Tylersport, PA. I forget when that is, but I know it comes up in the summer. But even social media now, it's just like, it's riddled with people that you could be inspired by. So I'm just going to skip to the next slide. Okay, that is the end. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing because I was nervous I was going to run long. So stop sharing. And then you'll back to my face, maybe. Am I right? Okay, cool. So that's my presentation. I hope it was informative, and I'm willing to take any questions. It looks like there's quite a few in the chat, but I'll let Katie
we'll help you with that. We'll help you
okay.
with that.
Thank you.
Dan, thank you so much. This was so informative and so well put together, so organized. And I know
so. I don't know if it was or not, but
from my point of view, it certainly was. I know I have a lot of questions, but I want to make sure we have a few minutes, and I just want to make sure that people here who have joined us have a chance to ask you any questions they might have. Let's start out. If you have a question for Dan, please add your question in the chat, and Katie and I will make sure that it comes up in our conversation. I wanted to start out, there were so many good points that you raised, Dan, especially the note that you ended on, support your artists because they need tools to keep doing what they're doing. That is such an important point. Woodworking is not a cheap occupation by any means. It requires skills and tools and facilities, and Shay has pointed out, and sometimes paints, and all of these things can add up, and we want to make sure that they have the means.
Feed the artists. They get hungry.
Yeah.
We want to make sure they have the means to push their vision and skill. So
Leave the art.
that's what happens when you support an artist by buying their work. I wanted to ask you so many questions. I think one of you and Joe are kind of unique in that you're both makers also. Can you talk a little bit about this specifically, about the insights that you might bring to collecting, being an artist yourself in the same field?
Yeah. So one thing that always draws me to a piece is the fact that like I don't want to know how to make it right away. It's not something like I can jump into and just remake it. It's all the pieces are like inspirations. So each piece that I try to get is a meeting or an interaction I've had with someone that piece, if I could just like throw it on the lathe and make it, I don't think it would be as like mentally valuable to me. But that being said, I also know a good few makers whose pieces that I probably could make, but are just cool people, and I definitely want a piece of theirs in the collection. But as far as like branching out of the field and trying to attract like other people to woodworking, I think is it's an interesting feat in that the community is very tight. And it's unique that like, you know, I know Joe through Echo Lake, I know Mark, I know Mike, I know a lot of these people. And I always find that like the people that are really interested in collecting outside the field tend to be some younger makers, and then sometimes it's just people that really took a liking to a piece at some point. But I also think like a lot of younger makers need to find significant others that are like not in woodworking that make a lot of money to get them
Always a
involved in
good
it.
practice. Yes,
Yeah.
always a good plan.
Yeah.
To support Germania. I also wanted to ask you, Dan, what it's like to live among these artworks, because I think that's something that, you know, most of the time we encounter artworks in public spaces where they've sort of, you know, there's infrastructure arranged to display them to the public, but also conserve them. While they're being displayed in public view, but in a home environment where there's intimacy and there's the daily, you know, you're getting your coffee, you're eating your dinner, you're watching television, or, you know, whatever you do at home in your domestic spaces, you're like doing it among collection of artworks.
Yeah. So I'm not like, I think I said a little bit ago, like I'm not a big photo person. I think if you go through my house, there's only like 2 photos, and they're of like me and my niece and nephew, or my sister. And I always thought like when I went into people's houses that just had like a bunch of pictures of them, and it was like their house, I was like, that's kind of weird. Like you just go into your house and you like look at pictures of you all day. So part of me was always interested in like, I don't want to look at a picture of me. I want to look at a thing that a friend of mine made. And I love interacting with them on a regular basis. Like everything is like the bowl with my dog on it is right next to my bed on a shelf. So I see it every morning when I wake up. When I go to my when I walk in the door from work every day, I see the Mark Sfirri bats in the cabinet by Katie, like right when I see it. When I make my morning coffee in the kitchen, as soon as I turn around is where I see like that print wall. And so like being able to like, yeah, every day, just the other day, my girlfriend was over and she was sitting at the desk in that room that has the print wall. She's like, I think this is like my favorite spot in your house. And part of it is like that spot is like warm and inviting, and then it's like surrounded by artwork that's like unique and weird frames that it's in, that are also by makers. And I think that all of those like little daily interactions add just like a little bit of liveliness to things. It's also one of the reasons why I like drink my coffee or tea out of a handmade mug, because it's just like that little bit of interaction with like something that you know was made by someone that you can like share a moment every day or every weekend with, like a piece of art really intimately. Like that holds a hot beverage that like my mouth touches every day. Like it is like it is like an intimate experience to be able to like walk into a little time. Like Joe has a museum, I have like a little gallery. But yeah, it's really nice.
That's such an important aspect of living with craft that we don't always talk about this, and maybe it warrants a deeper discussion at some point, but the bridge that craft offers, and living with craft offers on a daily experience. It's artwork. It was made as the result of someone's engagement with the material, but it also can be used in our daily and most personal rituals, like drinking tea. And you have, in doing that, you have a connection with the maker that's very, very special and very personal. And I think that merits more investigation. Let's see, we have, oh,
I just want to relay comment on Facebook for Dan. Betty Scrupino, thanks you, Dan, for the very enjoyable, interesting presentation. She especially enjoyed your comments about the artists you personally met.
Thanks, Betty. You're definitely one of those artists that I've met, and I've really enjoyed that interaction with. So thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Hi. We have a question from, I think it's Janine. I want to say it's Janine. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that it's Janine. Yes, it is.
It's
Yay.
me. I'm sorry. I accidentally sent it just to you, Nava, but yeah,
okay.
it's me. Hi. Hi, Dan.
That's okay. We are graced with the presence of Janine Wei. And Janine, do you want to ask the question, or you want me to read it?
I can ask it. It's a little bit wordy, but I just wanted to say that I really admire, Dan, your like attitude or like ethos toward collecting. And I mean, you already know this, but I have such bad anticipatory FOMO for missing Echo Lake this year. But I guess my question was, so as a person with a really bad memory, I've always thought of objects as like a cool like touchstone, or like a like embodiment of, you know, something intangible, like an experience or a person or memory. And man, so like hearing you talk about so many specific personal connections is really inspiring. And like I can see that as such a huge motivator for collecting. And so the question is, like, being that it's so personal and being that you're a maker, I wonder if, do you have any examples, or like does it like end up feeding back into what you make in any way?
Okay, that's a good question. There are times where connections that are made definitely feedback or inspire work that I've made. One of those was like I'm good friends with Eric Weidman, multi-axis woodturner, and there was a series of wood turnings that he and I made a few years ago that were like flower pots with our other friend Jeff Chelf. But even on top of that, like as my work has grown, I've definitely gained knowledge or like probably like subconscious inspiration from certain other makers. Like I can definitely look at things that I've made more recently and go back to things that I made a long time ago and be like, wow, this person, like a technique this person showed me that I didn't necessarily know that I knew is like tucked into this piece. So one of those specific examples is, for a while I made this series of like holy bowlies. They're just like bowls that are on stands, but they're like really carved out and airbrush painted and burned and lacquered, and like the bases are steel. But when I look back at how they're made and how they're decorated and painted, you know, I see inspirations from Derek in, you know, the utilization of a specific tool and techniques, but very different from the way he would approach it. And then on top of that, I see inspirations from like Bin Po in the directional airbrushing that he utilized, that I probably was just like, you know, subconsciously like, oh, if you shoot something with an airbrush on its edge, it's going to take color differently than if you shoot it dead on. But yeah, just there's definitely things that I could probably give you better examples next time I see you over beers, but I don't know when that'll be, and I'll think about it till then.
That's such a good case for makers collecting other makers' work in order to like grow themselves too.
Oh, yeah, every time I can look at like I can look at how something is made or something is decorated and be like, oh, that's really cool. I don't want to mimic that, but that's like a really nice little quirk that person did. It's like a bunch of little studies throughout the house.
That's great. Thank you both so much.
Yeah.
I have one more question. I know we're kind of going over schedule here, but Dan, you are not what the wider art world thinks of when they think of art collectors. You are significantly younger than the typical art collector. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think that also if you could share a few thoughts about encouraging younger potential collectors to dive in, what would that advice be?
I would say find one of the first things that I love is like, you know, there's UArts in Philly, there's Bucks County Community College. Go find like a student show. Go find a maker who you can sit down and have that conversation with, talk about their piece, interact with them, and then if you like it, get it. Because for the most part, and I hate to say this about like students undervalue their work. They do. And a lot of times you can end up having a conversation with someone, supporting them for what they need, or even more than that sometimes. Be like, look, I know like this is a really cool piece. You're asking $50. It's worth more than that. Like I'll give you like $100. But those are like quick ways, I think, to like dip your foot in the water of collecting. And they also bring a moment into it as well. I would, there's like there's two ways that I brought up collecting. One is like you go to a symposium, you see a piece of art you like, you buy it. And one is like a personal experience. And I'm always pro personal experience. You could even, it could be as simple as like, hey, you and your friends are out on the town. It's First Friday. Go to the Center for Art and Wood, check out the artwork there, interact with people, mingle with people. At that point, you know, there might be like, it might be as simple as like getting a t-shirt that reminds you that the Center for Art and Wood exists. And then you can go back later on and check out the shows or follow people on Instagram or whatever it is. that a lot of things that I've added to my collection are things that I probably, like, I made friends with someone, and then a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, found myself, like, they posted something on Instagram, or they posted something on Facebook, or I met them again, and it was just like, oh yeah, like, you made this, that's way cool, and I want a piece of yours. Like, for example, Katie Hudnall. I had a really weird experience where I, like, didn't meet her and then I met her. So it was, I had applied for grad school. I got accepted to Heron School of Art and Design. She was the teacher there, or the professor there, and I ended up deferring for a year because I got a job that I wasn't sure if, like, getting a master's was right for me. And then I didn't go because I was just like, all right, I have a job that's, like, more lucrative than I think a master's degree is going to be in this field. And then the year after that, she was at Echo Lake. And then I got the opportunity to actually, like, hang out with her. And I was like, holy crap, like, why didn't I go? Like, it was one of those, like, I maybe should have gone to Heron and, like, had the opportunity to study under you, because it would have been amazing to have, like, Mark, Alphonse, and Katie as, like, the inspirations, because they all kind of, like, have these language that speak to each other, but in a very different way of, in a different expression almost. It's weird, but, like, they all make kind of weird, unique, quirky things that aren't just like, this is how you carve a ball and clawfoot. But having the opportunity to meet her, and then I got, like, a little thing of hers at that Echo Lake, and then maybe, like, 2 years later, it was probably like 3 years ago now, when y'all were doing the making a seat at the table show, she had posted something on Instagram about that cabinet, and I was like, Katie, is that, like, I want that. Do you have that? And she was like, yes. And I was like, how can I get that? And she's like, well, I'm in, Indianapolis, but she's like, I'm actually coming to Philly in, like, a month. And I was like, convenience. But, there's an importance to, like, dipping your toe in the water and finding, like, a piece or a maker that you really like, that you're inspired by. And for me, at the start of collecting, I literally just asked people, like, one of the first people I met was Keith Holt. And I was like, Keith, like, how do you make this? Like, what do you do? Like, blah, 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 blah. And then there was a point where I was just like, do you have anything that, like, I could have as an inspiration? And that's when he was like, here, have this, like, head that I've, like, made that's, like, 90% done. And I was like, dude, like, this is a little too much, but, like, thank you. But it never hurts to, like, ask either. Like, people in our field tend to be generous. They tend to want people to know what they do, how they do it, what inspires them, and they like to talk about art. And if you can get someone to talk about things with you and then be inspired by it, yeah, you can, start getting things, start, like, collecting from them. And then one of the other benefits to being a maker in the field and also wanting to collect is that I have an opportunity to trade artwork for artwork sometimes, or at least barter a little bit of my artwork for, like, someone else's. And it gives me the ability to not have to, like, really break the bank sometimes. But it also gives me the opportunity to be like, hey, I know that, like, I would be honored if this piece of mine was in your collection, and I'm honored to have yours in mine. It's like a trade, but it's just like a little emotional connection that you have with someone. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dan,
Yeah.
for your passion and powerful motivation and also really practical, the 3 Ps, power and practical advice for emerging collectors. I really
Yeah.
also appreciate your mentioning the Center for Art in Wood, and sometimes it starts with a t-shirt, sometimes it starts with a visit, sometimes it starts with student shows. And I know I tend to go to student shows in order to see the results of young kind of elastic minds
Yeah.
under the tutelage and guidance of artist professors. Sometimes ideas and concepts get honed while a student is in the embrace of the academic environment, because they're not pressured to create practical, saleable works. And so sometimes you get really great conceptual and fully realized conceptual ideas in works in student shows that you wouldn't necessarily get from emerging artists. So it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been so great, Dan, and I really appreciate all you do for the field as a maker, and also as a friend, and also as a collector. It's been really, you've been very generous sharing your thoughts tonight. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us. One of those great opportunities to see work tomorrow, it's tomorrow at the Center for Art in Wood. We have extended hours in the evening, and you can visit us from 5 to 8, as well as in the daytime. And then at 6:30, I think, Katie, we have, no, what time?
6.
6 p.m. we have Jack Larimore, aforementioned artist extraordinaire, talking and holding forth about objects in the center's permanent collection in his object lesson installment. So there you go. It's an active weekend at the center.
Thank you both for hosting. It's been fun. I hope it was informative.
Good. Again, thank you for sharing. And thanks everyone for your interest. You can check this out asynchronously on the center's website too, if you want to take notes. Have a good weekend, everyone. It's great to see you all. Take care. Thank you, Dan. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Dan.
Take care.
Be safe.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks for logging in.
Bye.
Here.